The abandoned beginning. Have you ever felt like the world forgot you before you even got a chance to live? Les Brown was born on the floor of an abandoned building in Liberty City, Miami. No fancy hospital, no baby photos, just silence and struggle. From the very beginning, life told him, "You don't belong here." He was adopted by a kind woman, Miss Mamie Brown, who had little but gave him everything: love, strength, and belief. But even love couldn't protect him from the labels society gave him. In school, he was called educable, mentally retarded. His dreams were crushed before they even had a chance to breathe. But here's the twist. Where others saw failure, Les saw a challenge. Where they wrote him off, he wrote his future. This wasn't just the beginning of a hard life. It was the foundation of a powerful story. Because if a boy born with nothing, called worthless by the system, can rise, so can you. His pain became his message. His silence turned into a roar. This is where it all began, not in the spotlight, but in the shadows. And that's where most legends are born, labeled mentally retarded. Imagine being a child, sitting in a classroom, trying to learn, and then the teacher calls you out. You're not like the other kids. That's what they told Les Brown. Over and over, they tested him, judged him, and then labeled him educable, mentally retarded. Those 3 words shattered something inside him. He was just a kid, but the system decided his worth before he even had a chance to prove himself. Every time he raised his hand, the class laughed. Every time he tried to speak, someone said, "You can't." But here's the truth. They saw weakness, but he was building strength. He wasn't broken. He was becoming unbreakable. Years later, Les would say, "Someone's opinion of you does not have to become your reality." Because opinions don't define you, belief does. And Les Brown chose to believe in himself, even when the world didn't. That label could have been the end of his story. But instead, it became the fire that lit his voice. He didn't just rise above it, he crushed it. Now, the same kid who was laughed at stands on stages before millions, reminding them, you have greatness within you. And guess what? So do you. The voice of one teacher. Sometimes all it takes is one voice to change your life. Les Brown had been laughed at, dismissed, labeled, but then one teacher refused to accept what the world said about him. His name was Mr. Leroy Washington, and one day, in the middle of a classroom full of doubt, he looked Les in the eye and said something unforgettable. Don't you ever say that again. Someone's opinion of you does not have to become your reality. Those words stopped time. No one had ever spoken to Les like that. Not as a failure, not as a mistake, but as someone who could be more. That moment rewired his soul. Mr. Washington gave Les the thing no label ever could: permission to believe. He told him to read every day, to stand tall, to speak with power. He saw greatness where others saw less. And Les began to rise. Every word, every lesson, every book became a brick in the foundation of the man he would become. And when Les stepped on stage years later, he wasn't standing alone. He was standing with the voice of Mr. Washington inside him. That teacher didn't just change a student, he unlocked a legend. So if you're watching this and you feel like no one believes in you, just remember, it only takes one voice to spark a revolution inside you. Maybe today, that voice is this video. Discovering the mic. They said he'd never make it, but Les Brown had a secret, a burning desire, not just to live, but to speak. He didn't know how to hold a mic. He didn't have a golden voice, but deep inside, he had a message the world needed to hear. The first time he stood on stage, his hands shook, his throat was dry, his knees almost buckled, but he showed up. That's the moment everything began to shift. Les wasn't the most talented. He wasn't the loudest, but he was the hungriest. And when he grabbed that mic, even in fear, he discovered something. You don't have to be great to get started, but you have to get started to be great. That one mic became a bridge from his pain to his purpose, from silence to strength, from nobody to the voice that would touch millions. He practiced day and night. He listened to the best speakers. He recorded his voice on cassette tapes over and over until he believed what he was saying. And then people started listening. They heard something different, raw truth, real passion, no sugarcoating. Le Brown wasn't just speaking words, he was speaking life. That mic gave him power, but his story gave it meaning. So, if you're afraid to start, do it afraid. Pick up the mic, start the video, write the page. Greatness doesn't begin when you're ready. It begins the moment you refuse to stay silent. Climbing without a ladder. What happens when you have no connections, no college degree, no rich background, and still you want to climb? Le Brown didn't just climb a ladder to success. He climbed without one. No shortcuts, no silver spoon, just pure grit. Every door was shut. Every no echoed in his face. People told him, "You're not qualified. You don't belong here. You're too late." But he kept showing up, because hunger doesn't need permission. Les knocked on every radio station in town, again and again, until one day, a man gave him a broom. Not a mic, not a job, a broom. And Les said, "I'll be the best floor sweeper you've ever seen." He cleaned, he studied, he waited. And one day, when a DJ got drunk and didn't show up, Les was ready. He got behind the mic, and the city heard a voice they couldn't forget. That's how you climb when no one gives you a ladder. You build one, with sweat, with patience, with preparation. Success doesn't knock, you kick the door in, and sometimes you start by sweeping the floor. So if no one's giving you a chance, make one. Learn everything. Show up early. Stay late. Le Brown didn't rise because he was lucky. He rose because he never stopped climbing. The speech that changed the world. One stage, one mic, thousands of people, and one man with a voice full of fire. Le Brown stepped up, not as a celebrity, not as a trained politician, but as a survivor. His voice shook at first, his hands trembled, but the moment he spoke the words, "You've got to be hungry," everything changed. That one line lit a spark across the world. In that speech, Les didn't just talk about success. He talked about failing forward, about how pain can become power, about how no one has the right to tell you who you are. His words weren't fancy, they were real. He told stories of rejection, poverty, being laughed at. And yet, here he was, standing tall, smiling wide, with a voice so powerful, people cried, people stood up, and people changed. That one speech didn't just motivate, it transformed. It reached schools, prisons, homes, broken hearts. It told people, you were born with greatness, act like it. That day, Les Brown didn't just deliver a message, he gave people permission to dream again. And in doing so, he saved more lives with words than most do in a lifetime. So the question is, what are you hungry for? Fighting the inner enemy. Success isn't just about what you face on the outside. The real battle happens within. Le Brown had stood on stages. He had moved crowds. He had inspired millions. But when the lights went off and the crowd was gone, the real voice he had to fight was his own. That voice said, "You're not enough. You're just a label. They're going to find out you're a fraud." That's called imposter syndrome. And Les felt it, deep. Even at the top, doubt whispered in his ears. Because when you come from the bottom, success feels like a trick, like it could disappear any moment. But here's the lesson Le learned. You will fail, you will fear, you will fall. But what matters is what you do next. Lay began to train his mind like a muscle. He filled it with books, with affirmations, with belief. He stood in front of mirrors and told himself, "You've got greatness within you," again and again, until it became his truth. The inner enemy never completely disappears, but now Les knew how to fight, not with fists, but with focus, not with noise, but with discipline. So if you're fighting that same voice today, know this: you're not alone. The fight is real, but so is the victory. Legacy over limitation. One day, the mic will be put down, the lights will fade, and the applause will stop. But what remains is legacy. Les Brown knew this, that life isn't about how high you climb. It's about how many others you lift along the way. He didn't want to just succeed. He wanted to leave something behind, something that would outlive him. That's legacy. It's not in cars or cash or awards. It's in the lives you change. Les poured into others, young speakers, broken families, lost souls. He gave them tools. He gave them belief. He reminded them, your story matters. Your voice matters. Don't just make a living, make a difference. And he led by example. He built programs. He mentored youth. He stood with the forgotten because he remembered what it felt like to be invisible. He chose legacy over limitation. That's the lesson. When you think your life is too broken to matter, that's the very reason it does. Les Brown turned his scars into schools, his pain into purpose. And now, long after the speeches, his words are still echoing. In voices he helped rise. Live full, die empty. That's not just a quote, that's a way of life. Chapter 9, From Local Hero to Global Giant. It started in a small neighborhood. A boy labeled educable, mentally retarded. A dream too big for the streets he walked. But dreams don't care where you start. Les Brown's voice first echoed in tiny community halls. Then came bigger stages. Then national TV. Then the world. From South Africa to Singapore, London to Los Angeles. His voice cut through language barriers, through cultures, through doubts. Why? Because truth doesn't need translation. Les Brown spoke the human language of pain, hope, and purpose. CEOs, students, single moms, ex-convicts, cancer patients. They all felt like he was talking just to them, his message. You have greatness within you, no matter where you are. That message became a global anthem. One man's voice became a movement. From crowded slums to corporate summits, people stood and clapped, cried and believed. And Les never forgot where he came from. He brought his story with him, raw, unfiltered, real, and the world embraced it. Because the world doesn't need more polished perfection. It needs more authentic power. Les Brown became a global giant, not because he was flawless, but because he was fearless. So if your story feels small, remember, it's not about where you begin. It's about how far you're willing to go. The final word, live full, die empty. What if you died today, with your book unwritten, your dream unlived, your message unsaid? That's the question that haunted Les Brown. Not death, but dying with something still inside him. He once said, "The richest place on earth is the cemetery, because that's where you'll find dreams never pursued, ideas never launched, speeches never delivered." Les refused to become that kind of story, so he made a choice. Every single day, he would give everything, every word, every ounce of energy, every piece of love, truth, and wisdom he had. And that's what it means to live full, not half-hearted, not someday, but now, boldly, completely. Les lived with urgency, like he knew his time mattered, because it does, and so does yours. So write the book, start the business, forgive the pain, love deeper, speak your truth, don't hold anything back. Because when the final moment comes, you shouldn't go out full of regrets. You should go out empty, empty of fear, empty of doubt, empty because you gave it all. That's Les Brown's final message. Don't just exist. Don't just survive. Don't just dream. Live. Die. Empty. If this moved you, don't just scroll. Subscribe to Legend Made Here for voices that awaken your purpose, for stories that become your strength. Turn your potential into power. Because remember, legends are made here.